If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP, the AI native ERP that upgrades right from QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We are in the middle of kind of a dead zone in the world of Nintendo. You know, we have Splatoon Raiders coming out next week. We will have an episode giving a full review of that game at that time. Next week is also the 250th episode of this very podcast. We'll be doing something a little fun with that. But this week, we don't have a whole lot of news to talk about. Not much has broken in the world of Nintendo. There's a few smaller releases. So I'm going to do what I typically like to do when we reach these weeks where there's just not much going on. And I am going to sit here by myself, look you in the eye, and answer questions that you have submitted to me. These were solicited over on Patreon, on Discord, even on social media, over on my Blue Sky account at Brian P. Shea. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to get through as many of these as I possibly can. I have a list on my main screen right here, and I'm just going to go down the list. I have barely even looked at what the topics are here. So bear with me if I don't have great answers right off the bat. I like to do these kind of off the cuff, so that way it's a natural reaction here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run down the list here and then just kind of get to as many of these as possible. And, hopefully it results in a cohesive and fun episode for you. Before we get to that, though, I know I just solicited questions from everyone over on the Discord and the Patreon and even on my Blue Sky channel for this episode. For next episode, I put out this call a few weeks ago, and just in case you are interested in taking part in something that is going to be a community-wide thing that I am doing for the 250th episode, I would love it if you would leave a comment on this on YouTube, on Spotify, or on the Patreon or Discord server if you were there. Sharing your top 5 Nintendo games of all time. You can interpret that however you want, similar to first Nintendo game. You can interpret that however you would like. If you want to make it like these are the best Nintendo games that have ever been created. These are my favorite Nintendo games that have ever been created. I'm looking for as many people who listen to the sound of my voice when this podcast comes out to share that, and we'll do something with those responses next week. So again, you can email me, brian@allthingsnintendo.com. You can leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube. You can come on the Patreon or join the Discord server and share it there. But I'm looking for as many people to do that as possible. So if you're hearing my voice and you would feel so inclined to contribute to the database that I am building, that would be really fun. It'll make next week's thing just a little bit better. So before we jump into these questions, though, I do want to, surface what I always surface, that this show would not exist without the folks who support me on Patreon. The $3 tier gets you access to the community Discord. The $5 tier gets you early and ad-free episodes. And then the $10 tier gets you shout-outs at the end of every episode, plus the occasional bonus podcast, All Things Gamers, where I talk about stuff not related to Nintendo, basically whenever I have something on my mind. I had a decent amount of output during the summer gaming extravaganza. I did one on the State of Play. I did one on Summer Game Fest as a whole. And then there were a few others that I've done in the time since that show has been back. I believe you also get access to the entire back catalog of All Things Gamers. I think there were 26 episodes of All Things Gamers that you can dig through. before I stopped it when Game Informer was relaunched. And now there's been, I believe, 3 or 4 additional new episodes where it's just me talking about any gaming related topic on my mind. So go to patreon.com and search either Brian Shea or All Things Nintendo to support me over there. It is the absolute best way to support this podcast and help it continue week after week. You can also, leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you are listening to this on. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Those are free ways that you can support the show. The Patreon and becoming a paid member is the best way. The easiest way is to leave a review on whatever platform you are listening to this. All right. So with all of that out of the way, let's get to your questions. I always say that, these episodes, these Q&A episodes, the first few that I did were with a guest. And I think that I found that we dwelled way too long on some of the questions and we ended up not getting to a lot of the questions as a result. So I'm trying to avoid that here by doing it myself. And then that also creates this environment where you, the listener who supported this podcast, who submitted these questions, you are the guest on this episode and on these Q&A episodes. So really appreciate everyone who submitted questions. This episode would be a whole lot different if you didn't do that. We'd have to, maybe find other topics to talk about. There was one that I was kicking around, but I'm actually going to kick that down the line a little bit. I think it's going to make more sense at a different time. But yeah, have some fun episodes planned on the horizon. But let's get to your questions. That's what this episode of All Things Nintendo is all about. We're going to start with Jonathan Scruggs over on Patreon. Jonathan writes, what is your favorite and least favorite Nintendo console era? What is your favorite non-Nintendo console era? Okay, so favorite Nintendo console era, there's a couple that immediately come to mind, but honestly, I think it's going to be the Switch. I never thought I would say that. I think that for the longest time, I thought the SNES was going to be my favorite Nintendo console ever. Nintendo 64 gave it a run for its money, but I don't think it had the breadth of titles and releases on that platform. So I'm going to go with Switch number 1, SNES number 2, N64 number 3. And now the Switch 2 is off to a great start. I might end up adding that into this equation. But that said, the Switch 1 just had an all-time run. We got Breath of the Wild right off the bat, my favorite game of all time. Super Mario Odyssey later that year, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, ARMS is an underappreciated game. The Switch era was so popular, it also attracted a lot of the third-party developers and publishers who had kind of abandoned Nintendo during the Wii U era. So I think that the Switch absolutely transformed the way that Nintendo exists in the industry today. The console itself, all of the Nintendo consoles always have some sort of gimmick. At least they have since the Wii, right? The GameCube, you could say, had a gimmick, but it was more the Wii was where they really started driving home, and the DS and that era was when they were really like, every system that we release needs to have a gimmick that is the core and central to the gameplay. And the DS was the touchscreen, the 3DS was the stereoscopic 3D and gyro and touchscreen. The Wii was motion controls, obviously. Wii U was the second screen experience. The Switch, what they did by making the core gimmick complement core gameplay was such a smart idea. And not only that, they consolidated their developers stable. So the developers didn't have to choose between creating a game for 3DS or creating a game for Wii U. They could just create a game and it would go out to both the handheld and the home console market. The collection of games was so fantastic. So many of my favorite Nintendo games are on the Switch, and they've done an incredible job of bringing forward both ports of old games, but also just in the virtual console, or not virtual console, but Nintendo Switch Online libraries. Those have been great. I've found a new appreciation for so many classic games, and the fact that you can buy the original controllers or something approximating the original controllers, so you can play these games in the form factor they were intended to be played in. that really, really has made it so that the Switch is pretty indisputably my favorite Nintendo console at this point. I mean, it was the platform that inspired me to make this podcast. So it's hard not to say that it is my favorite. Now, the Super Nintendo is what made me a hardcore gamer, right? Like I used to play NES games at family's house or friend's house, but the SNES was the console that I got for Christmas. It made me so I was playing Mario World and Donkey Kong Country and Mario Paint and Super Mario Kart and all those amazing games on SNES. So that's going to be my answer for second. And then the N64, just so many great memories with all those amazing games. And, you look at the games that we're getting in 2026 on Switch, two of Nintendo's biggest releases are remakes of of some of their best games on the N64. And there's still so many great games on N64 that they could do the same thing with, and I don't think many people would complain, to be honest. But Ocarina of Time, what more can you say about that? So that's my top three. Least favorite, I mean, you can always say like Virtual Console. I'm gonna go. This is gonna be controversial. I'm gonna go GameCube. I think that it was in this weird era where I feel like we have, and I know that people are going to get upset about this, but I think that the GameCube gave us a lot of underwhelming entries in beloved franchises, and it's a weird in between era. I think that the GameCube was kind of Nintendo. It was their last time being a direct competitor to the PlayStation and Xbox, which is funny because it was also the first time they were a competitor to Xbox. And I think that Nintendo kind of saw the writing on the wall that if they were going to try to compete directly with PlayStation and Xbox, they're not going to keep up with the technology and like the hardware power that Xbox and PlayStation were willing to invest so much money in. So I think that the GameCube was kind of Nintendo realizing that we want to transition into something that maybe has more meaningful impact than just better graphics as like the key selling point, which is what Xbox and PlayStation continue to do. So I don't know, like Luigi's Mansion just didn't do a ton for me. I think Super Mario Sunshine is perhaps the weakest 3D Mario in my opinion. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are fantastic. I just think that there were a lot of titles and a lot of franchises that got their start on GameCube that didn't really appeal to me directly. Now, I'm not saying it's the worst console era. That is for sure not the case. I'm just saying it's my least personal favorite. Mario Kart Double Dash, fantastic. Super Smash Brothers Melee, amazing. I still think that in 2026, I'd much rather play Ultimate. And I know there are Smash Melee purists, and I have no problem with that statement. I don't think that is something that somebody could. I don't think I would get upset if somebody told me, no, I vastly prefer Melee. I think that's perfectly fine. Similarly, if you like Mario Sunshine, that's also fine. It's just not my favorite. I've never really had a great time with Mario Sunshine. Whereas if you look at the 3D Mario games that came immediately before and immediately after that, I would take Mario 64, the Galaxy games, all of those titles easily over Sunshine. So that's my pick for my least favorite Nintendo console era. If we're not going to do like the whole like Virtual Boy thing, I would take the Wii U over the GameCube personally. I think the Wii U's library of games, despite the sales being abysmal and despite me not really loving the form factor of the Wii U, I think the Wii U has an underrated stable of games. You see that evident by the fact that the Switch, a lot of its success was porting over Wii U games and enhancing them. The Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that was a Wii U game before they brought it over, and it's the best-selling game on the Switch. So, favorite non-Nintendo console era, it's probably a toss-up between the PS2 and the Xbox 360. The PS1 still kind of felt rudimentary to me, but the PS2, it really hammered home like what PlayStation was hoping to accomplish, and also the amount of games released on that system was absurd. I also think there was a bit of like a golden age of sports games in like kind of the PS2 era, and then on Xbox 360, That was Mass Effect, that was Assassin's Creed, all those great games. And then also Rock Band, Guitar Hero. I know Guitar Hero got its start on PS2, but I really got into it on Xbox 360. And just all of those games, Rock Band, that became my obsession. So that would be my pick for my favorite non-Nintendo console era. Probably Xbox 360 and then PS2. And then outside of that, maybe, man, this generation's rough despite how many great games there are. I would say maybe the PS4 is my favorite, my third favorite, if I'm going to do a top three. Okay, so we spent a lot of time on that. Apologies, that was meant to be a quick one to start us off. Firamar on Patreon says, so Brian, do you think another video game crash like the one we had in 1983 would ultimately be beneficial to the gaming industry? One that would purge all the investors and make it kind of like a great reset, so gaming companies would have to be more resourceful and responsible for their money. Also, I think Nintendo would ultimately pivot out of it as they've survived the Wii U depression and have been around for over 100 years. Let me start with that. There's another question that they have here. I don't think that there's any world where it would be good. I think that we are already in the midst of a kind of slow motion crash, if I'm being honest. And it has been catastrophic for the games industry. Like, make no mistake, like having, I think I saw some stat that it's like more than 50,000 people unemployed in the games industry. Now, don't quote me on that. That was just something that I saw kind of in passing on LinkedIn. That's bad for everybody, honestly. Like, the games that are coming out are made by people with institutional knowledge. These are people who have the experience and the know-how of how to make games and do it great. Like, so many amazing games come out every single year, and it's not good enough for a lot of these companies that are trying to keep people employed, or trying in some cases to make their bottom line look as good as it can. And that's a problem. What we need instead of a crash, which I think would ultimately drive a lot of people out, not just the investors and executives that are wreaking so much havoc on the games industry currently. That would also drive out a lot of players. That would drive out a lot of developers as well, which we're already getting a lot of developers driven out. That's the biggest long-term consequence of the state that we are in right now, right? Is these long tenured developers are going to get sick of having no job stability and then getting hired and then laid off a few months later. They're going to leave the industry and find more stable footing. And then you could say, like, okay, well, less experienced developers or people out of college are going to graduate into the industry and then take their place. That's not necessarily something you could take for granted, because these developers or these would-be developers are looking for stable employment. We've seen article after article about how right now a lot of graduating seniors out of college are entering into this catastrophic job market. I don't know that going to a place or an industry that has been notorious for the past 6 years for layoffs is the answer. For like, oh, well, I need to get a job. Yeah, like, it might be cool to say I work in the games industry, and that might be immediately alluring, but how much longevity? Like, I think a sober analysis by a lot of game developers or would-be game developers would tell you that it's not a stable place to try and stand and build your house, right? Like, it's the old parable of building a house on the sand. Like, that's what it feels like, I think, working in the games industry right now. And I can't help but think a lot of developers are looking over at other industries and seeing solid ground that they could build their foundation and not have to worry about the whims of an executive or whatever coming in and washing away the sandy foundation of whatever you're trying to build in the games industry as it exists right now. I think that a great reset is needed. I just think that a crash would be more bad news than good news. Now, what I do think would be beneficial to the games industry would be some recalibration of what it means to be successful and what it means to fund a video game. Because I think that the main problems right now are that, well, one, the bottom line and the appeasing the shareholders has become the most important thing for so many businesses. But it's also that so much stock is put into one release because these games have just massively inflated budgets. They have just these extraordinarily extended timelines, development timelines. Like, look at how long something like The Elder Scrolls 6 has been in development. Now, you could say the same thing about Starfield, right? Those games have taken so long to be created and be made and finally come out. If they don't hit these ambitious sales numbers that make their parent company say, yeah, this was all worth it. Like, I'm so glad we invested so much time and money and resources into this game, that puts a lot of pressure into it. And then if it comes out and it doesn't immediately grab an audience, look at Concord. Look at High Guard, those live service titles that came out. They had these expectations. We needed X number of millions of players by week 2. They didn't have it. What happened? Those games got shut down. I think both of them were shut down and the studios closed before the end of the first month. That is absurd. Fortnite was barely a success before the end of its first month, and only then it was because they pivoted to look over the other side of the fence and say, oh, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is doing so much cool stuff in the battle royale genre. What if we made our version of that? So I think that a lot of, on the live service end, it is a lot of, I think, misaligned expectations when it comes to what is realistically achievable, because these live service games end up being kind of chore like if you've ever played one where, like, yeah, at first it's super fun. You're going around playing a lot of really cool content. Like, I take Destiny for example, so much great content you can dive into there. But eventually it becomes like, okay, I need to log in, I need to do my dailies, I need to turn in any quests that I have. It becomes a thing that it's almost like a second job. And there's a thing that there's only so much time in the day. I know that I have a couple of games on my phone that I play that it's like a daily obligation or a daily, almost daily thing that I log on, I play for 20-25 minutes, and then I'm done for the day. I can't do too many of those. I got rid of Marvel Strike Force because it was too much of a time commitment, too much of a grind. And then I got Clash Royale, which is a little bit better in terms of respecting my time. But I considered re-downloading Marvel Strike Force, and I fired it up and had all of the menu items popping up, and I was just like, this just does it like physically react, because I was like, this is just another like thing that I'm going to feel obligated to do every single day. And I think that there's a miscalculation on a lot of these studios where they think that they can just come in or at least a lot of the executives are saying, we want to be like Fortnite. So go make a game that is going to capture the audience that Fortnite did. And unfortunately, there's only so much time in the day that players have. So if somebody plays Fortnite and they've poured 1,000+ hours into that game, what are the odds they're going to step away from that to play your live service game? And when that doesn't happen, because it's a tough sell in this day and age to have somebody invest so much time into a game, especially if it's like one of those games where it's like, oh, well, the good stuff is locked behind the post game. It's like, no, that's immediately a turnoff for me. And I'm not going to jump into that because I just don't have the time, especially as I've gotten older and I have like, adult real world responsibilities. That has become a very hard sell for me. I would take a single player, like, confined experience over a live service game most times. I mean, there's been some very cool live service games, but so I think that, a realignment of expectations, a realignment in reining in game budgets, reining in development time cycle or development cycles and like the timelines to get these games out, and making it so that not every game needs to sell like multiple millions of copies in order to be considered a success, and also allowing studios to try new things. And if they're not immediately successful, allow them to make another game, because like we just saw Xbox having all this like kind of like this purge of studios, and thankfully none of them shut down as of yet, as of this recording, but they are all under new ownership, either independently or under a different ownership agreement. And it's like, these are kind of some of the prestige studios. They just don't sell gangbusters, but like they are like a thing to have in your portfolio to like say, look, these are the types of games we're putting out. These are the types of experiences we're putting out. These games are the kinds of games that people buy an Xbox for, is what some of those studios should have represented for Xbox, but instead it was all about the bottom line. So I think that we need to allow for every for every Psychonauts, we need to allow Double Fine to make multiple more experimental, experiential games like Kiln or what was the one they put out last year, Keeper. Those are the types of things that I think ultimately lead to a not only a well-rounded portfolio, but better success in the future. And we've seen several examples of studios releasing experimental titles and then they don't really sell well, but then they leverage some of those lessons learned in a future title that does sell well. I mean, we saw that with Nintendo. With the Wii U was basically a half step with them testing the waters for a portable gaming system. And of course, the Wii U was not truly portable. You had to be within a relatively close distance of your console. But then without the Wii U, do we get the Switch? Probably not. And, it's not like the Wii U sold super well. Do you think Nintendo ever was tempted to say, oh, let's pack it in and not make any more consoles? I highly doubt they ever even had that conversation. So.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
Part 2 of Firamar's question on Patreon. Do you think Nintendo predicted the state of gaming 20 years ago when they pivoted from going with super cool or super graphics on the Wii? I remember Iwata saying that too many powerful consoles can't coexist, and looking at the industry now, Nintendo seemed way ahead of the curve with that big pivot. What's your take? I think that that's 100% a smart move. I just talked about it in the previous answer to my favorite Nintendo console era. I think Nintendo really was on to something when they decided to pivot away from that. And I think that it's smart to focus more on gameplay mechanics than stunning graphics. And don't get me wrong, I love that Star Fox, the remake of Star Fox 64 on Switch 2, looks as good as it does. I'm glad we're getting Nintendo games in 4K and 60 FPS. I think that's fantastic. I was excited when the Wii U came out and we were able to play Mario games in HD and Zelda games in HD, even though we didn't get like a new Zelda game until Breath of the Wild, but we got Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. That was super cool. So I think that it was a smart move. I think that's going to be something, it was prescient now that you look at how much these computer components cost. PlayStation and Xbox, if they are in this arms race of like, all right, Project Helix and PlayStation 6 are going to be even more graphically intense than the PS5 and Xbox Series X, I think they're going to be in trouble in terms of the pricing when you look at how the AI component shortage is going to affect the pricing. Nintendo is also going to be impacted, but not to the extent, if I had to predict this anyway. I mean, I have no insight into the pricing, but they're not dealing with as advanced chips and memory and all that stuff. So I think that we've already seen them be impacted. They're already announced they're raising the price of the Switch 2. They already raised the price of the Switch 1. I don't think it's going to be like a leap like we saw with the PS5 Pro, where it went from $700 to $900. So Nintendo is, in a better position to weather this storm right now, not to mention they're also in line to be the best-selling system once again, if the current numbers keep up. The Switch, obviously one of the greatest selling platforms of all time, far from a graphical powerhouse. I think there needs to be a reasonable level of disparity, right? It can't be too underpowered, or else it looks like it's, a previous generation, almost like how the Wii felt when compared against the Xbox 360 and the PS3. But it can't be so expensive to make these components that you're going to have to skyrocket the prices, and then the emphasis goes on the graphics. I think what we need is a good middle ground, because if you go too underpowered, we saw what happened at the Switch at the end of its life cycle. You stopped getting a lot of good third-party ports, and the ones that you did get were often by far the worst version. you look at the Switch 2, it's powerful enough to do a lot of really good third-party ports. I mean, look at Cyberpunk 2077's Switch 2 version. It's phenomenal. And that's a graphically intensive game. And I think that we're going to continue seeing that for the foreseeable future. And hopefully we don't have Nintendo fall too far behind in the graphics race, because then once again, you're going to fall into the same trap that the Switch did at the end of its life cycle. I also think that if the prices continue in the trajectory they are, which we have no reason to believe they're not going to continue to rise with the component shortages and the tariffs and all that stuff that is impacting the prices currently, I think you're going to see a far lower adoption rate of the PS6 and whatever Project Helix ends up being called on Xbox's side, because people aren't going to be able to afford a $1,200 console. Like, how many people do you know that have bought a Steam machine that is like what, $1,300 around for like the good version? It's just a lot of money. I think that a lot of people, if they want to buy a killer gaming rig, they're just going to try to build their own thing. And like, yeah, if you want to build a PC now, it's a historically bad time to try to do that. But I don't think that people are going to buy these ready-made options if they are priced like that. Similarly, I don't think we're going to see extremely high sales of Project Helix if it's priced at something like $1,000 to $1,200. I think people would stay with their PS5 and Xbox Series X, and developers are going to follow where the players are. So yeah, you'll see modest sales on these systems, but think about like why we got so many developers still releasing games for Xbox One and PS4 so late into this life cycle. It's because the PS5 and the Xbox Series X did not sell particularly well, especially in the beginning. Not to mention, it was difficult to find them early on because of supply chain issues related to COVID back in 2020 when those consoles released. So there's a lot of contributing factors. In that regard, I think Nintendo is positioned particularly well. Obviously, they could have never predicted the AI proliferation that we're in the middle of right now. But in hindsight, it is an extremely savvy move to have conditioned people to not expect the top end graphics. And I do think that Satoru Iwata, as Firamar pointed out here, was onto something, because I think that at a certain point, if you make all of the systems kind of equally abled in terms of graphical output, it becomes a thing of like, okay, well, I'm just picking whatever exclusives I want. Like that's what ultimately determines if you buy a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, right? Is what exclusives do they come with? And I think that's been Xbox's key learning from this generation when Phil Spencer's regime wanted to move away from exclusives. Yeah, that was probably better for gamers, but it was terrible for business. And we're seeing extremely low sales numbers on the Xbox Series X, because people they didn't need to buy an Xbox Series X in order to play a lot of really great Xbox games. They could play a lot of them on the PS5 or in some cases the Switch. So I think that, the PS6 and Helix, it's going to come down to exclusives. Yes, especially if they remain kind of neck and neck in terms of performance. But there's also a lot of rumors about what those systems could deliver. And in terms of like form factor, there's the rumors swirling that it could be a handheld device on either camp, but it might be more of a Switch competitor, in which case Nintendo might have to try to adapt a little bit if their form factor ends up becoming more of the norm than what is currently the norm, which is like the PS5 and Xbox Series X form factor. So yeah, I mean, they are definitely ahead of the curve with that. And I think that, a lot of developers, especially if they take my advice in the previous answer of dial back the budgets, they're not going to need the extra power delivered by PS6 and Helix. They're going to be fine releasing it on the larger install base on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and hopefully also the Switch 2. And I think that is ultimately going to be the biggest impact into how the next generation goes. Because if it goes down this current trajectory, where, you may have read my opinion piece on Game Informer that said the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X generation has felt like a race to the bottom. It used to be about one-upping your opponent, your competitor, back in like the 90s when Sega and Nintendo were going at each other. Now it seems more about like, all right, how much can we annoy our player base and frustrate them without driving them into the arms of our competitor? And I think that if if these companies want to win back their player base, one, the console needs to be priced reasonably, and two, it needs to provide more benefit rather than just the least amount of frustration. So that's my convoluted take on that question from Firamar. Nintendo 101 over on the Discord. Question: top 3 Nintendo practices that have put them in a great market position that they are today. I would say 1, exclusive games. Like, Nintendo always is going to have the benefit of having the greatest developer in gaming history themselves as exclusive. So they have, they have a monopoly on Nintendo games at Nintendo, believe it or not. So as a result, that has led to them being in, there. I feel like most people, if you're a hardcore gamer, if you want to play the greatest spectrum of titles, you're probably going to buy either a PC, an Xbox, or a PS5. You can get one of those. For me, I have all of them because it's my job. But you're probably going to get one of those and then a Nintendo, whatever the current Nintendo game is, because you're going to want to play the Zeldas, the Marios, the Donkey Kongs. All of those games are I think games that people in the gaming space want to play, and they want to be part of that zeitgeist of like, oh my god, the new Zelda game is out, everybody's talking about it. Like, remember social media during Tears of the Kingdom? That was huge. So, and I mean, Animal Crossing, don't even get me started on the social media conversations surrounding Animal Crossing in 2020. So that's one of them. The other one is what I talked about already, not getting involved in the arms race, kind of marching to the beat of their own drum. I think that has been enormously beneficial to them, and it has allowed them to be differentiated enough where it doesn't just feel like, okay, the Switch 2 is just a handheld version of a PS5, right? Like, I don't think that would sell as well as this does, where the Switch and the Switch 2 in particular feel like they have character. They feel like they complement the core mechanics that the developers want to make. It's not shoehorned in gimmicks. It is them giving players what they wanted, as dictated by the sales of the Switch 1. And the Switch 2 has, kind of delivered on the promise of the Switch 1 by, boosting the horsepower and all that, but not to an extent that it becomes unwieldy. So I would say it's measured approach to performance and a focus on gimmicks that enhance the experience rather than detract from it. Like, remember the Kinect and how games that use that, it was sparse, the games that used that to great effect. And I think that near the end of the Wii, we got that where it was like, okay, we're just shoving motion controls because we want to make a Wii SKU for this game. And that was ultimately, it felt like we were kind of veering away from that Nintendo seal of quality. But I think with the Wii U, yeah, there were still a lot of shoehorned in second screen experiences. But like, look at Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Those were the best versions of those games, not only because of the improvements that they did, but because the second screen enhanced that. I would say the same thing about Splatoon 1, like the second screen with the map where you could just touch on the screen and have your guy fly to wherever your teammate was. That was amazing. So yeah, there's the top 2. The other one I would say is talent retention. Now, Japan has different labor laws, but they also have, look at how many long tenured developers Nintendo has in its bullpen. Shigeru Miyamoto has been there since the 80s. Takashi Tezuka just retired after 42 years with Nintendo. Eiji Aonuma has been there since the 90s. Yoshiaki Koizumi, all of these guys have been at Nintendo for so long. And not only that, they mentor the next generation. Almost every Nintendo legend that I've talked to has mentored the next generation of developers. Like Shigeru Miyamoto mentored Eiji Aonuma. Takashi Tezuka mentored Shiro Mori, who was the director of Mario Wonder and has worked on several other games. Eiji Aonuma has mentored Hidemaru Fujibayashi, who was the director of Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. It's this incredible lineage that they've created for their developers that has given them that leg up. And that's why Nintendo continues to innovate in the space. They continue to differentiate themselves in the space, and they continue to deliver on that Nintendo seal of quality. So yeah, those are my top 3 right there. The exclusives, the lineage, and then the kind of reserved approach to the arms race on console development.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Development. Comment from Nintendo 101. As of late, your writing has been very on point. Thank you. I feel you've leveled yourself up. I have really enjoyed your opinion pieces. I like your writing a little unhinged. Keep it up, please. Thank you. That's very kind of you. The reason that Nintendo 101 is doing this, I asked for questions, comments, topics, and rants. So, topic from Nintendo 101. I realize digital is more popular these days. However, do you think there could be any chance that Nintendo sees the mistakes of others and just doubles down on printing physical copies? Not key cards. I'm talking full prints. I feel like collectors would just all simply go to Nintendo because it would be the only thing to actually collect. I know collecting isn't the bread and butter of Nintendo sales, but it has to equate to tons of money. I mean, I could see a world where that is. I think that Nintendo probably is hearing the game key card complaints that a lot of people have. And I can't help but feel that a lot of developers are also feeling that. But like developers are also feeling the pinch from the people higher up about their bottom line and the memory of that AI is pulling, which is probably a key driver for why so many developers are going game key card, is because it just costs so much to put the full game on a cartridge at this point because of these component shortages. I haven't confirmed that with any developer, but I would have to imagine that's a contributing factor, just like it is for the price going up for any part of gaming right now. It's tariffs and it's AI driven component shortages. So I think in an ideal world, that would be amazing. I would love if Nintendo would do that. I just think that we're going to have to wait for these prices to stabilize a little bit before the third-party developers are typically the problem I've found with the game key cards. I think that it's going to be a harder sell to them. I think Nintendo, they would love to put all of their games on all of their cartridges and not have to worry about game key cards and all that nonsense. So yeah, I think that would be a smart approach if it could be sustainable, which is, I don't know what the pricing is. Anything that I try to tell you would just be uneducated guess at best. So yes, I think there's value in that theory. I just don't know the way to test it without talking directly to the people who buy those cartridges and make the determination of if they should splurge on the ones that can house their full game or if they should just buy the cheapest one and make it a game key card. And then the rant that Nintendo 101 left on the Discord. Other than key cards, I have nothing to complain about. Okay, fair enough. Zek Three Sword Sama on Patreon went the rant route, as he pointed out. He said, not going to lie, my biggest pet peeve right now is game key cards and releasing a Switch 2 version with no upgrade path. The only publishers that should be allowed to use a game key card should be the indie publishers. I don't want to see Sega, Capcom, Square Enix, Bethesda, Ubisoft, etc. dropping a brand new game on a game key card. Straight up, I just won't buy it until there's a sale. I have 3 different people in my house playing on the Switch, and the virtual game card thing from Nintendo is ass. Having a straight up cartridge is the way to go, and I don't want to download it because I don't want to pay for the super expensive Express SD cards. Put the game on the friggin' cart. This is an old issue that is now new again, but no upgrade path for the Switch 2 version? WTF are we doing here? Square Enix just announced a Switch 2 version of Star Ocean Second Story R. Great game, by the way. Highly recommend. This is a game that has been around since the 90s, and the idea that I can't just upgrade my Switch 1 version for free is absolutely insane. I'll censor that. I get maybe saying that the upgrade for like Hogwarts Legacy should be $5 to $20, but for a 30-year-old game that got remade about 5 years ago, and you want me to buy a $50 Switch 2 version? What the actual F? I'm not letting Nintendo off the hook for sucking slightly less than Xbox and PlayStation. Guess I gotta save up for my gaming PC now. On a similar note, I don't want to see any major publishers doing a limited run of any of their games. Sega and Konami have worked with limited run games to publish their games physically. You are Sega and Konami. Publish your games like the major publishers you are and give us a retail release. To add to my frustration with this, limited run games is just garbage to begin with due to their terrible business practices, so it only rubs salt in the wound when very popular IPs from Sega or Konami get a limited release from a company with a terrible reputation. Wow, Zek Three Sword Sama had some steam to blow off there. We already touched on the game key card thing. I'm in agreement with you. I think that the business realities are the reason for that, particularly with relation to the components that it would cost to put a full game on your cartridge. That said, I wish that they would do the full game. The lack of an upgrade path from the Switch 1 version to Switch 2, I am with you. That is garbage. Final Fantasy X 10-2 HD whatever collection that they're putting out. From what I understand, no upgrade path. I own the Switch 1 version. Thankfully, Square Enix did pass me a code to check out the Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy X. It's my favorite RPG of all time, so I'm absolutely going to play it on the Switch 2 version. There's no upgrade path. Sega released Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition. The Switch 1 version of Sonic Frontiers, notoriously bad. No upgrade path if you bought the Switch 1 version, at least not at launch. Star Ocean Second Story R, like Zek pointed out here, no upgrade path. It discourages you from buying games. It's like when I pointed out a few weeks ago that the Kingdom Hearts collection, if you own the cloud version, there's an upgrade path because they're delisting the game. But if I was fine playing the cloud version, why should I not have access to that game anymore? You should give me a free copy of the Switch 2 version, which is actually going to be on your system and not a cloud version. It is completely anti-consumer. I'm with you 100% on that. And to briefly touch on limited run games, I've heard a lot of people having problems with limited run games, unfortunately. I have not had any experiences with them, so I can't tell you anecdotally, but I've seen a lot of people complaining on social media, particularly with like the Sonic Adventure or Sonic X Shadow Generations Collector's Edition, where it was like delayed and then like the quality was really poor from what I understand. So that's really unfortunate because that statue where it was Sonic and Shadow standing on a Dreamcast was super cool. And I almost splurged on it. I think it was like $250. I came really close to splurging on that. I ended up not, but yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't because I've heard terrible things about limited run. So, yeah, the state of physical media is not in a great place right now. Let's jump over to Zach Benkel on Patreon. Are you somewhat concerned, worried about dev times getting longer with Switch 2 generation? It lately feels like directs have been underwhelming, and I think it's largely due to games taking so many years to make now. Looking back at the GameCube and Game Boy Advance generation, it's crazy how Metroid Prime 2, Pikmin 2, Pokemon XD, and all these sequels came out within a few years. Nowadays, it feels lucky if we get one Metroid game per console generation. I think that's been the case with a lot of franchises, right? Like we used to get multiple Zelda games in some generations. We got Majora's Mask in a year. We got Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on GameCube. We didn't get anything on Wii U, but that's because Breath of the Wild was so delayed. I think that is where we started seeing the pivot point. And then look at PlayStation 2. We got 3 Grand Theft Auto games, and now it's been several years. More than a decade since we've gotten a Grand Theft Auto game. We're finally getting one this year. I'm super excited about it, but it's just indicative of how long these games now take to make. Elder Scrolls used to get them a lot more frequently. Now it's been since 2011 since we've gotten a real Elder Scrolls like mainline game. So, and Fallout, same thing. It's been over a decade since we've gotten Fallout 4. We got 76, but like there's the reports that Obsidian is making a new Fallout game, which is cool, but that's probably realistically like 4 or 5 years away if they're just starting now at the best case scenario. So yeah, I do think that game development timelines are overly inflated right now. And I think that Nintendo is not going to be the one that is as heavily impacted as some of these third-party and other first-party developers. I think Nintendo can can manage having a prolonged development cycle. I mean, it's been so long since we've had a Mario game, a 3D Mario game. Yeah, we got Bowser's Fury, but like a full scale Mario Odyssey style thing, we're coming up on a decade for that. Like if the rumor is true and we do get a 3D Mario game next year, that's a decade between Mario 3D games. That is a long time. But that said, Nintendo has done a fantastic job of keeping up their release cadence. Like it's rare that we go a calendar month without a first party Nintendo release. And I think that's by design. I think that's them realizing that they can keep themselves in the conversation. So Nintendo, despite some of their development timelines seemingly, prolonging longer than they would probably like them to, they have at least managed it. So it's not like we're going like 4 months without a Nintendo game. They have it spaced out as such that they can get away with it, and it's not the end of the world. Zach goes on to say, thoughts on the potential price leak for the Ocarina of Time remake? It's possibly $60, which makes me think it's a one-to-one remake. I would be disappointed and feel like Big N is missing a huge opportunity to reimagine a classic in the modern sense, post Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I feel like Ocarina of Time is not like Star Fox, and it would feel really dated as a simple remake. That being said, considering it's Zelda and a much bigger game, I don't think they could charge less than $70 even for a simple remake. I don't think we're going to get something completely transformative in Ocarina of Time. I could be wrong there. I would love to be wrong there. I think that they're going to go a more, maybe not one-to-one remake. I think that it's going to be something closer to what we got with Ocarina of Time 3D, but maybe like if Ocarina of Time 3D was one step beyond the original Ocarina of Time, where they did better visuals, they reworked the water temple, they reworked the iron boots, so that way it was like an equipable item rather than having to go into the menu to take them on and off. I think that it's going to be maybe 3 steps beyond the original Ocarina of Time. We already saw the better graphics, but how much are they realistically going to do? I originally had the idea that they were going to do kind of like make Hyrule Field like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom exploration, and then have like the linear path and everything. And they still could do that. I would be surprised if they went truly all out and expanded Hyrule Field to be some massive area. Because if you look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Hyrule Field isn't all that huge. Like it's bigger than Ocarina of Time's, but like Hyrule is the huge area. Hyrule Field itself, which is where Ocarina of Time's like hub world takes place, it's relatively, not confined, but it's relatively small compared to other areas of that. So there's a way that Nintendo could make that more of a modern hub area, but I don't think it's going to go full on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. If it's $60, if that's the rumor, I've yet to see that rumor. I can't verify that one way or another, and I don't think I could get an answer even if I reached out to them. But I haven't seen that reported. But if that is in fact the report, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, $70 would probably be the sweet spot if I'm thinking of like the route that Nintendo's going to take. But then that's setting a dangerous precedent, because $70 is what they charge for Tears of the Kingdom. If they're charging that same price, they're different economic situations and all that. But if they're charging the same price for Tears of the Kingdom, then I would worry about what the price of the next full mainline Zelda game would be. I think that $60 is probably the best route there now that I think about it. And then thoughts on Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave costing $80 for physical. It's going to look weird seeing that alongside GTA 6 on the shelves for the same price when one has a budget of possibly $1 billion. This is something that Nintendo has come out and said. I think it circles back to the game key cards where they are charging $10 more for physical. And I think a lot of that has to do with the stuff that we've already covered on this episode. Without the rise in component prices and import tariffs and all that stuff, I don't know that we have $80 physical price tags for $70 digital games. So yeah, it might look weird next to it, but it's also attracting completely different audiences. And yeah, Grand Theft Auto is going to outsell any game put out this year, and it's not even going to be close. So I think it's going to be tough to have any game go toe-to-toe or stack up to what Grand Theft Auto is going to do at retail, even though Grand Theft Auto itself is not a physical release from what the reports are saying, right? Like it's going to be a digital code in a box. So it's kind of circling back to that game key card thing again, but with the biggest release probably in entertainment history. Here's one from it's still Zach Benkall. Have you ever had to break the news of a highly anticipated game being bad? For a game you reviewed early, have you had to come out and say, yeah, this one's disappointing? Oh man. I feel like there have been. I don't recall which ones though. I remember not being super high on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which, history has proven me wrong. I stand by the fact that Black Flag had way too many trailing missions. I remember not loving Black Flag when it came out on Xbox 360 and then reassessing it when it came out on Xbox One and liking it a lot more. But I didn't give Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag a great score back when it came out on Xbox 360. That's probably the closest I've come. God, I'll have to think more on that. If I have a better answer, I'll circle back. And then the final question from Zach: who are you rooting for in the World Cup? Well, Mexico and U.S. were my number, I guess tied for first. Neither of them made it past the round of 16. Of the teams that did, I was rooting for probably France. I wanted to see France make it. They did not. So now that we're in the final, I mean, I don't really want either team. I mean, I guess Spain. I haven't really followed Spain. I've watched all of Argentina's matches. I watched a lot of England matches. They're out now. I was really thinking France. This was France's World Cup to lose, I thought, and sure enough, they did. I mean, the depth of that roster was incredible. And Mbappe is just the top of his game. I was rooting for Norway because Erling Haaland is super fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, this has been a great World Cup for the superstars, right? Like Messi, Mbappe, Ronaldo, all of those guys, Erling Haaland, they've all had great World Cups. So it's been fun. It's been very fun. I went to a couple of big like viewing parties that were extremely fun as well. It's been fun. It's been a great World Cup, and I'm disappointed by the teams that made it to the Final Four, but here we are. Speaking of World Cup, I'm going to do a pausa de hidratación.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
Yeah, I've been talking for almost an hour now and needed a hydration break. I've been watching on Telemundo, so that's why I said it that way. We've gone a long time already, so I'm going to try to go through as many of these as I possibly can within the next 15-20 minutes. Dan wrote this via email. Hi, Brian. I'm writing to you to discuss something that I haven't heard mentioned since the Switch 2 released. I'm an avid Nintendo and Switch fan, which means I've played a ton of games on both Switch 1 and 2. I almost always play in handheld mode and always with the Joy-Cons. I first played on the Switch Lite and then upgraded to the OLED, and the gripping the Joy-Cons on both of those. I'm sorry, I'm struggling here. Gripping the Joy-Cons on both of those did cramp my hands slightly, which led to some wrist discomfort, especially with those games that necessitated heavy button and stick usage, such as action RPGs like the Ys series. I was hoping that these tight Joy-Con ergonomics would be improved with the Switch 2, but unfortunately, in my experience, it is worse. I cannot play the Switch 2 without a buildup of pain in my wrists. I've been buying extenders to help with this. I finally landed on a singular device that feels comfortable, but it's a shame I cannot use it without these extenders, which means I can't detach the Joy-Cons to play. Have you heard of anyone else having this issue, or is my 40-year-old body finally rejecting gaming? On a side note, I know you always ask your guests for their entry point into Nintendo. What their entry point into Nintendo was? Mine was Trog on the NES. Wow. Underrated game. Spike and Bloop need to be put in Smash Brothers. Thank you for your time. Love your podcast. All the best, Dan. Thank you so much, Dan, for writing in. I'm almost 40 myself. I'm about 6 months shy of 40 right now, which pains me to say. But I have not had this problem. I used to have this problem all the time with the other Nintendo handheld gaming systems. The 3DS was so uncomfortable for me. It got substantially better with the 3DS XL and then eventually the Switch. But yeah, like having my hands like kind of cramped over and like curved in an unergonomic way has always been a problem for me. But it's been my hands, like it's been like a cramp in my palm more so than my wrist. I have been having wrist pain more so with PC gaming and Xbox lately, but not with Switch. I do, admittedly, I play a lot in TV mode. I don't play on in handheld unless I'm traveling. And I did, though, invest in something like similar to what you're saying. Let me see what it's called because I've loved it. It's a I don't know if I can reach it without leaving here right now. Give me 1 second. So I have this right here. It is just a little piece of plastic, and you slide the Switch 2 into it, and it adds just a little bit of a curve that makes it so that it feels like you're holding a regular controller. I believe this was recommended to me by Eric Van Allen at Game Informer, and it has really transformed the feeling of how it feels to hold your Switch 2 when you're traveling or playing in handheld mode. I know you can't detach the Joy-Cons, which is the biggest downgrade there. But yeah, that is my travel companion with my Switch 2. Let me see if I can find what it's called. I think it was like Savage Raven or something like that. Amazon giving me pop-ups, but yeah, I just bought it off Amazon. Yeah, Savage Raven stand grip for the Nintendo Switch 2, a soft protective case with textured grips. Yeah, it has worked wonders for my enjoyment in playing in handheld mode, and it also gives it a little bit of protection if you drop it, and it doesn't make it so the Joy-Cons fall off and all that. So highly recommend that if you're having problems. But yeah, as Dan pointed out, there are downsides to that. We're on kind of the home stretch here. Adam sent me this on email. Hey, Brian, I love your podcast and everything you do at Game Informer. Just listened to the April 24th episode, and I know it's a little late. I'm also a little late in responding to this. I wanted to see if you were still taking ideas for dream game pitches. The one that I think would be amazing is a new 2D Metroid game by none other than Iga. Can you imagine the creator of Castlevania Symphony of the Night getting his hands on the Metroid franchise? Dark, high action, and incredible exploration, and lots of secrets, of course. Anyway, just wanted to share that. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look up what Koji Igarashi is up to right now. I mean, he's working on the Bloodstained series, which is also a great Metroidvania. He left Konami. When did he leave Konami? In 2014. So yeah, he was there for 24 years. But yeah, that would be fantastic. If he could get his hands on the Metroid franchise, I mean, I'd be all in on that. Who wouldn't be all in on one of the masters of the genre who continues to do good work, getting to do that? I mean, it's like the Dead Cells creators getting to do a Castlevania game. Like, that's a no-brainer. That's fantastic. Yeah, do that. Carlo Pastena via Instagram. What are your top 5 arcade style and simulation sports video games of all time? Oh man, let me get a little piece of paper here. Let me just stick it with arcade style, and I'll give a couple of my favorite simulation ones, but I'll do an actual top 5 for arcade style. Number 1, I'm gonna go with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I think that really set me down the path of loving arcade style games or arcade style sports games. Number 2, I'll go with NBA Street Volume 2. Fantastic career mode. I'm still needing to check out NBA The Run, which is like a NBA Street spiritual successor by some people who actually worked on the original NBA Street games. So NBA Street Volume 2, let me see here. I would say NBA Jam Tournament Edition is probably number 3. I'll do SSX Tricky as number 4. And, oh man, now I need to look up and see if I'm forgetting some here because I don't want to. Let's see. NFL Blitz was great. Backyard Baseball was fun. Oh man, Ken Griffey Jr.'s winning run on N64 was fantastic. Ready to Rumble Boxing. Sorry, I'm just looking up like some lists here. Yeah, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, NBA Jam, all those. So I will go with Tony Hawk 2, NBA Street Volume 2, NBA Jam Tournament Edition, SSX Tricky, and then we'll go Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run. Yeah, I'll go with that. I don't know if Winning Run really qualifies as an arcade style. It's not like over the top arcade style, but like it's a good one. As far as my favorite, I mean, MLB The Show has got to be one of the modern releases of MLB The Show has got to be up there in terms of my favorite modern like simulation games. NBA 2K, back before they injected it full of so many microtransactions, that was top tier. I really enjoyed Triple Play Gold Edition on Sega Genesis. I still tout that maybe as my favorite sports game of all time. I poured probably hundreds upon hundreds, if not 1,000 hours into that game back when I was a kid. I'm enjoying MLB The Show this year. I would love to say Madden has been great, but it really hasn't. I feel like they need to figure something out with that franchise. And I think the lack of competition has really impacted a lot of these sports franchises, and innovation has been really at a, all-time low because there's no competition driving them. So it's unfortunate, but probably like an early 2000s Madden. Those college football or NCAA football games were amazing. The college basketball games were so much fun back in like the 360 and PS2 eras. So yeah, that's what I'll go with. Our dear friend Logan Plant over on Blue Sky. What is the best Nintendo remake ever? And then Joseph Jury, a listener of the All Things Nintendo podcast, said, and why is it Super Mario All-Stars? Honestly, that might be my answer. Super Mario All-Stars, giving you remakes of the first, I guess, 4 Mario games on one cartridge was a mind-blowing concept when I was a kid. Honestly, I think Star Fox is up there in terms of like how good of a remake it is. Like it gave you the base game with so much added context. I mean, I would have liked a little bit in terms of like feature being added in there, but I'm having a blast with that game. I think to truly answer this, we'll have to wait until Ocarina of Time comes out. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting any here. Let's see. Oh, Link's Awakening is a great example of that. Oh, wait. Metroid Prime Remastered might be the greatest one as well. So, yeah, all great picks. I'm going to go with Mario All-Stars though. Super Mario All-Stars was so good. Andy Junkins on Blue Sky. How and where will Nintendo capitalize the most from the recent rakes being stepped on by Microsoft and Sony? I mean, really, it's just staying the course, right? Continuing to put out amazing exclusive after amazing exclusive. Like, there's not been a single month in Nintendo Switch's life cycle where I'm like, I regret owning this console. Whereas I can't say the same thing about the Xbox Series X, where it's like, I've gone several months at a time with my Xbox Series X not even being turned on. My PS5 gets more use than it. I was an Xbox main player coming into this generation, and I was so excited for the Series X. Now I barely play my Series X, and Nintendo is still probably my favorite, but like if I'm playing a multi-platform game, I'm getting it on PS5. I'm not getting it on Xbox. So I think Nintendo just needs to stay the course, try to keep their prices down, continue to release these amazing games. I mean, look at the run that they've been on. That's all they need to do is maintain, and they're going to do great. Xbox and PlayStation continue to, as Andy Junkins says, step on rakes. Go read my op-ed or listen to the earlier questions that I've have answered in this very episode. PlayStation and Xbox have not been doing great. And we've talked about that extensively over the past few weeks. I'm going to try to pronounce this name, Fijodo on Blue Sky. What would you want Nintendo to do for their next console, since this one was a sequel? Another Switch sequel, better graphics, a quirk with IR sensor, mouse controls, a Wii-like concept to try to broaden the gamer audience again, not necessarily meaning Wii branded, something else entirely. I mean, that's tough, right? Because um, Nintendo likes their innovations, but I think they also didn't want to spit in the face of all the people who fell in love with the Switch. And that's why we got the Switch 2. And I think that was the smart move. I don't think they needed to swing for the fences like they did when they released the Wii and the Wii U. I think that by releasing the Switch 2, they really did a great job with that. And I mean, we have a long way to go before the Switch 3 or whatever it ends up being called, whatever the next Nintendo console is. I would like them to keep, like, I was really, really glad they kept this form factor or general form factor for the Switch 2. And I do think that it is, I would like to see them carry down that route, or continue down that route of, our gimmick is that it makes it so you can play these core experiences and in more ways, right? It's not like, okay, we have to use motion controls for this game. Like, that's a reason I still haven't beaten Skyward Sword, is because the motion controls are just intrusive to me. And I've tried to use the Skyward Sword HD button and stick controls, and it's just really, it feels not as good. And I just, but like, the swinging my arm around in real time, just, it doesn't lend itself well to extended gameplay sessions, which I usually do when I'm playing a Zelda game, right? Like, I fire up Tears of the Kingdom, I'm probably sitting there for 3 hours, and I don't want to necessarily be, waggling my arm around like Link, swinging the Joy Cons and everything. I would love to see them continue down the Switch form factor. And maybe, I mean, we saw them with this generation doing mouse controls. We saw them doing, better motion controls. We're getting Nintendo Switch Sports Resort, which, the Wii Motion Plus was the driving force for the Nintendo, or the Wii Sports Resort. So maybe they're capitalizing on improved gyroscopic and motion controls with the Switch 2. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if, like, they tout that, like, yeah, the Switch 2's improved capability. So I think that what we need to do is, let Nintendo cook. They very rarely miss the mark when they innovate. Talking to myself, the person who you are asking this question, I'm saying let it ride, right? Like, keep working on what is working for Nintendo. This has been their most affluent era. And, why abandon that now, especially coming off of the Wii U era, just under 10 years ago, which was, one of their most dire eras since entering gaming. So that's what I would like personally. Now, I mean, I'd love to hear what people think about any of these questions, but in particular this one. Like, what would you like to see out of a next Nintendo console that hopefully is, especially with the prices and everything being what they are? I think that there's a lot of consideration that has to be put into a new console in this day and age. And, Nintendo is nothing if not intentional. But yeah, let me know what you would like to see in the comment section. Brian T on Blue Sky. What are the main differences you've noticed between covering Nintendo and covering other gaming companies? Nintendo can be frustrating in a few different ways. One, they can be very stubborn and closed off. Like, if I want to do a retrospective of a game, a lot of other studios will be excited to do that, while Nintendo typically likes to look forward more than look back. So it's rare that I can get them to agree to do a retrospective interview. Now, I always do slip them in. Like, if I'm talking to Shigeru Miyamoto or Eiji Aonuma about something new, I will typically try to slip in some questions about, like, a past game and then try to make something out of that. I love talking, like, the classics with them, and but they're not particularly fond of that. They're also frustrating, but in, I think, a good way. And that is that they march so heavily to the beat of their own drum that it's impossible sometimes to predict what they're going to do. Now, I've gloated a few times that I've predicted very well what they are going to do. And I had mentioned Star Fox 64 remake to reestablish the crew. I've mentioned an Ocarina of Time remake would make a lot of sense. I wrote an op-ed recently saying, like, yeah, this is why this makes sense. I asked Eiji Aonuma 3 years before Skyward Sword HD came out about a Skyward Sword remaster without the use of motion controls. So I have predicted what they're going to do, but it's much more difficult than, you really have to read the tea leaves, and you really have to understand the thought process behind Nintendo. And I think I've gotten as close as I can possibly get with this company, because they are very stubborn, very cavalier with their approach to not following trends. That's why I personally think that Ocarina of Time is going to release in November alongside GTA 6. Maybe not, I mean, hopefully not the same week, but like, within spitting distance of GTA 6, because they're insulated. They don't really care too much about looking over the other side of the fence and seeing what other people are doing. They want to do what their plan is, and they're going to execute that plan as good as they can. And I think that has worked out well for them for most of their history, but it does make it frustrating at times to be like, oh, this would make so much sense. Why isn't Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD on Switch 2, Switch 1, whatever? And it's like, okay, well, they probably have mapped this out years in advance of when they want to put it out there. Or maybe they have it like tucked away for a rainy day, for if like they announce a new Zelda game and it gets delayed by a year, like those games tend to be. And that way they can put out Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD to fill that void and keep Zelda at top of mind. Or maybe they're waiting for the Zelda movie to come out, and then the Zelda movie will be a great reason for them to re-release Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. Who knows? That's the beauty of Nintendo, is you just don't know what they're going to do next. All right, to close out this episode, hopefully you haven't minded me rambling on my own too much here. I do my best to not make it monotonous and not repeat the same things over and over again. We have two older ones here, one of which is so old that it has been answered officially by Nintendo. This is from Jonathan Fire Guy on Instagram. Where is Princess Peach from, and who is her family? I'm not going to spoil it, but if you've seen the Super Mario Galaxy movie, they answer both of those questions, very interestingly enough. Then we'll end on this. Edward Varnell on Blue Sky. Do you think Nintendo has trapped the handheld PC market, unable to innovate with hardware? Do you think the handheld PC market will do anything to overcome it? I mean, we've seen the Steam Deck released to pretty good reception and sales. I think that you can now get it pretty readily, but like, it's been a very popular device. There's rumors that Xbox and PlayStation are going to be entering the market with their next generation. Well, Xbox has already entered the market with its ROG Ally collaboration, but there's rumors that PlayStation is going to be taking the Portal, which is its like cloud streaming handheld device, to the next level with whatever the PS6 ends up looking like. So I think there's plenty of space for innovation within the handheld gaming market. PC specifically, I think that Valve is going to continue to be the king in terms of the PC handheld market, just by virtue of its link to Steam. But I think Nintendo is going to be the market leader for that, just due to its place as the established, ruler over that space, right? Like when you think of like gaming on the go, dating all the way back to the Game Boy, really, you think of Nintendo. So I think that Nintendo is going to continue to be synonymous with that, but there are going to be more and more handheld options, particularly as we continue to have the PC market be more expensive due to the prices of components. All right. Well, we've gone an hour 15. I think that makes this an episode. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. As you know, my Patreon and the associated Discord servers are the best ways to get any questions or comments in. You can also reach out to me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com or hit me up on Blue Sky or Instagram at Brian P. Shea. And of course, thank you so much to everyone who supported this episode on Patreon and also submitted questions. This episode would not exist without you. That is our show for this week. Thank you again so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, just in case you are not sick of my voice already, thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Before we get out of here, I just want to give a special thank you and shout out to the $10 patrons of this podcast. Alex Stadnick, Ben Richland, Big Mitch, Chad Brecky, Chaps My Ass, Damian Patino, Derek Sigmund, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jawar Hello, Johnny Five, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, KC Radioman, Kenny Shaw, Cody Gibson, Creeper207, MPI Creates, Nathaniel Edison, Ozman83, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Reichart, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, Zane Sink, and Zek 3 Sword Sama. I know I said that I couldn't have done this episode without those who submitted questions. I really could not even do this entire podcast if not for the folks that I just named, as well as everybody else who supports me on Patreon. Truly, thank you so much. It is only because of you that I am able to keep going week after week. See you at 250.
What happens when Toys R Us kids grow up and become parents? We become co-hosts of the show where geeky fathers unite to share the joys, challenges, and hilarity of navigating parenthood. Because bringing a grown-up doesn't mean you stop being a fan. It just means your sidekicks call you Dad. And Potteration means I'm proud of you, son. Find Wise and Nerdy everywhere that you consume your media and podcasts. We are a proud member of Potteration.